I'm your host, Alec Crawford, founder and CEO of Artificial Intelligence Risk Inc., and this is AI Risk Reward, a podcast about balancing the risk and reward of using AI personally, professionally, and as a large organization. We will discuss hot topics such as, will AI take my job or make it better? When I ask ChatGPT work questions, is that even safe? From an ethical perspective, is it enough for big companies to anonymize private data before using it? Probably not. I'm discussing these issues with AI experts to answer burning questions and stay ahead of the curve on AI. I'd also like to give a shout out to our podcast producer and audio engineering team at Troutman Street Audio. You can check them out on LinkedIn. Hi, everyone. It's Alec Crawford, your host for the AI Risk Reward podcast. And our very special guest today is Maya Ackerman, co-founder of WaveAI, professor at Santa Clara University, and author of Creative Machines. Welcome, Maya.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Wow, this is so awesome to have you here. So welcome to the show. I love starting with people's backgrounds. You're chatting earlier that you went to Waterloo. Just tell us a little bit about that experience and how you ended up in California, where the weather is vastly better.
It was such a formative experience. And I went to college at 18 thinking I'm going to be a programmer, all committed to that. Then I did an internship at Sun Microsystems and decided that's not for me. And so I was a TA for a long time for my internships and decided to do research just so I can teach. Fell in love with research, fell in love with machine learning and math. And it was actually after my postdocs in California, as in my first year as a professor, that I discovered generative AI, kind of a precursor to it called computational creativity. It's been a ride.
That's awesome. Yeah, so that was a pretty bold move. I mean, that was 2015 or so, is that right?
2015, I go to this workshop called ITA, Information Theory and Applications, and there's this teeny tiny session on computational creativity. I just saw the word creativity and I was like, ooh. Mm-hmm. And then Harold Cohen is on stage showing images of his automated painter, like this beautiful art made by AI. 2015, I had no idea this stuff existed. And then he starts yelling on stage how other people are calling his AI creative, but he's the only voice of reason. That's it. I was converted right there and then.
That is wild. And back then, I started doing AI. I was building neural networks from scratch at Harvard in 1987. And then we kind of went to the AI winter and nobody really cared, right? And so, to pick it up in 2015, that was definitely a bold move. And I'm sure also informed your book, right? So your book, Creative Machines, I thought it was very cool. It suggests that Gen AI acts like a mirror for our collective unconscious. That's my favorite part. If you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. As Gen AI became really popular and the machine brain became enormous and consumed the entire internet, there was a lot of conversation around kind of being mad at the developers who made the AI because it was sexist and racist, right? And all the other isms. And for good reason, right? I mean, it's amplifying these problems. But at the same time, these are all problems that exist in our society. And so it's literally like looking in the mirror and being angry at the mirror for reflecting yourself back. And so when we think about the solution, it's not just, oh, developers, how dare you, it's, can I do better? Is a mirror showing something true about me that I've been avoiding? So that's really key. That's sort of like one really critical part of this.
Totally. And you said that Being You by Anil Seth connected the dots between human and AI hallucinations. How has that idea shaped the way you think about the current era of AI?
He talks about the human part, how we go through life thinking that we're consuming objective reality, whereas in reality, we're constantly predicting what's going to happen. So really, we're making it up. We're trying to make sense of all of our sensory inputs. We are hallucinating. He called it low-grade hallucinations. We are hallucinating our reality as we go along, right? And what's really incredible to me is that these machines that we have now, unlike some of the earlier AI systems, they also work by hallucinating. They predict something and then they agree with their own prediction. So they're hallucinating constantly. And so I like to think of hallucination as synonymous with imagination, right? We are imaginative beings and our AI is intelligent because it's imaginative.
Yeah, that's super cool. I often think about how amazing it is that humans can keep the names and faces of hundreds, if not thousands of people, but always differentiate between, well, Jon Snow on Game of Thrones is an imaginary figure, but my doctor is not, right? Like, that's something that's, I think, is pretty amazing, that most humans have a pretty bright line between imaginary and real. Obviously, there are diseases in some people where that's not the case, but largely we can. And I think that's something that may be hard to port over to machines to some degree.
Alec, if I may, I don't entirely agree.
Okay.
I think in some ways we can, and you're absolutely right that in many ways we can, and in many ways we are consistent, right? But in many ways we fail constantly. I mean, look at anything from politics within an organization to the way people understand things like abortion and climate change. We disagree with each other so much on things that should be objective fact, perhaps. So somebody is not right about something, right? And also in daily life, how often does it happen to us if we really pay attention that we get at least little things wrong? You think you see your wife from far away and then it's someone else, right? Or you attributed a certain explanation to a friend's unusual behavior and then learned it's something else. We update our prediction algorithm constantly.
Totally fair. Now, shifting gears to talk about mentors and people you've learned from, obviously, David Locher, your husband, you've said in the past you've learned great stuff from him, but let's just talk about mentors a little bit and learning.
Well, my PhD advisor was very, very fortunate to be supervised by one of the brightest minds in machine learning, Shai Ben David, and other professors at University of Waterloo, and really just watching these people think. I remember realizing at some point in my grad work that it wasn't even the content as much as understanding the workings of their minds that was so powerful. And how much you had to insist on the same idea, how much you had to dig down the same hole if you wanted to make any impact in this world, right? It was very, very formative, those years in Waterloo.
Totally agree. And any institution of higher learning where everybody really cares a lot and is committed to the Socratic method, yeah, you're gonna experience that. It is. I'm a lifelong student of many things, whether it's AI or the financial markets or running a company for that matter. And I think that's super important to continue to learn something every day. Well, look, you've had a super interesting journey. You've done a lot of different things, professor, entrepreneur, artist. Talk a little bit about your music.
My music has been probably one of the most enjoyable aspects of my life. I learned to sing opera in parallel to my PhD in machine learning in Waterloo. And talking about mentor, my teacher, Katie, is just a godsend. That woman has taught me so much. And for a while, I wondered if I wanted to be a musician full time. And ultimately, it's my own struggles with songwriting. And I'm talking here like 40 years of trying to write songs and being devastated. But anything that I came up with, it ultimately what led to the creation of the first system that I built in generative AI and became the foundation of WaveAI, which is the company that we founded in 2017. So basically, I struggled with coming up with vocal melodies to something like, "It's so amazing to be on your podcast" can be, "It's so amazing to be on your podcast," right? Or "It's so amazing to be on your podcast," right? There are millions and millions and billions of possibilities, but I would only see the most narrow path. And we built an AI that kind of blew that out together with David Locher, and that's when I knew I had something. My songwriting has improved.
That's very cool. Yeah, I love the AI as an assistant. I can tell you, our sound engineer and producer is not super excited about AI doing everything to do with music. Writing it, performing it, all that. As a performing musician, that makes him not excited. But assisting the creative process, great. Like, love it.
I think that's where it belongs. I think it's a failure of imagination that we have so many replacive systems today. I believe that the investors and some founders watched a lot of sci-fi movies, and so when they think AI, they think autonomous agent. And that's why a lot of systems, even when you can prompt them, if you want to change something, you have to go from scratch, right? And it's a maddening experience for us. Ultimately, what people want is something to elevate them. They want to retain growth, right? It's like working with a humble, brilliant sage versus a friend who is smart and kind of like edges you out of the way because they want to be center stage.
Love that. That's so funny. So, so let's go back to your book, Creative Machines. What are some of the important takeaways there? Why should the audience pick up your book and read it?
Well, I appreciate that. I feel like when it comes to machine creativity, which fundamentally when it comes to generative AI, a lot of the narrative that we hear is crafted by the companies who stand something to gain from it.
Mm-hmm.
My book takes you from where it really came from, what does it really mean, and then most importantly, where do we go from here?
Mm-hmm.
How can you as an individual and how can we as a society take this to a place that actually creates benefit for all of us? It actually creates a thriving society. So there is a vision in the second half of the book of how people can do this individually and how we can do this as a whole, which closely relates to your previous question, because it's really all about the vision that I call humble creative machines, machines that meaningfully elevate us.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, I often talk about kind of two opposing paths for AI, neither of which will come true, right? One is everybody gets a co-pilot or an assistant like you're talking about. Productivity increases, rising tide floats all boats, and 10 years from now, everybody's super happy and unemployment's very low. And the flip side, where the evil companies go out there and replace everyone with digital workers, and we get 20% unemployment, and we have to start doing basic income, right? Like, neither one's going to happen, but we all need to pull towards the better one, right? Whether you're running a company or an individual or a politician, like, pull towards the better solution for society.
Exactly. I love what you said there, because that's exactly it. There are these two paths, right? And I completely agree with you that neither one is going to happen. What's going to happen is both. But what we don't know is how much of each we're going to get.
Yeah.
So, Alec, that's exactly it. The more we pull towards the one that elevates us, the better life we're going to have, and our children and our children's children, etc.
And now a word from our sponsor. Artificial Intelligence Risk Inc. accelerates adoption of Gen AI safely. They provide the governance, risk, compliance, and cybersecurity platform that financial, healthcare, and other regulated organizations need before they can use Gen AI safely and in compliance with regulatory requirements. Their software has won #1 awards for cybersecurity and compliance from Waters Technology. Find them at aicrisk.com. Yeah, totally. So let's shift gear a little bit to WaveAI, to the origin story. So how did that happen? How did you end up starting this company? I mean, obviously, with your background, we can kind of guess.
Here I am. This is in Florida. And David and I just made this system that takes in lyrics and comes up with different ways you can sing them. Now, it's like, we're talking not even music notation. It doesn't sing, don't get me wrong. It just kind of gives you in this really basic notation because it's just a super early prototype. So I print it out and I sit by my piano and I decipher this notation. And suddenly I can tell that my songwriting is at a different level.
Oh,
I can
cool.
see possibilities, right? And it's this crazy feeling of it has to be a company. I have to share it with other people. And of course, it takes 3 more years till, I'm this
Right.
academic till I find the guts to open a company.
Yeah. Well, lots of other professors are doing the same thing. You are not lonely in the computer science professors starting company category, or writing a book for that matter. You just have to look at some of the first 50 episodes of the show to know that. Um, and I love this. This is why do people listen to the show, right? They want to hear your story. Where are you coming from? What did you do? They want to learn, right? So, what are some ways you're learning? What are you reading or watching? Like, what advice can you give people about like learning more about AI?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think the way that I find learning very satisfying myself is I like learning directly live from people is one of my favorite ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very, very fortunate at this moment because I have a very strong network of people who are in this space. So I kind of, when something new happens, I find out about it 3 times before I read about it. But there is something really powerful and different about going to a conference, going to a workshop, and feeling the person on stage. You sort of understand what's important and what's not in a way that I find is harder to do online sometimes. So that's kind of a personal favorite way to learn. I guess it's a little bit unusual these days.
Yeah, no, in person is great. Like I go to a lot of conferences, and I think it's critical because what I found is today there's a lot of AI noise, right? And a lot of it's being generated by the largest companies. God, all you have to do is watch the US Open. And by the end of that, you're convinced that IBM could do anything for you in AI, which is probably not the case, right? Like, because they were advertising the whole time. That's AI. That's an example of AI noise, right? So, one needs to, and talking to people in person. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. Love it. Makes sense to me. So hypothetical advice, right? You're an entrepreneur. You've started a company. I think one of my observations is from last year to this year, it's actually been harder to run a startup, right? It's hard to raise funds. There's a lot of competition. Any advice to founders, especially around AI right now?
Advice to founders. This is probably the most difficult thing I've done in my adult life is to run a company. I think probably the most important thing is people, right? Make sure you have a founding team that can survive anything together and hire the best people. And it's very, very, very hard to do for a first-time founder. Because, when it comes to people, firing is almost impossible for a new founder. The guts to go for top people when you don't have top dollar to pay, it sort of goes against the grain of society, but people are everything. People are everything, and if you want your company to succeed, insist on having a superstar team at every level.
Yeah, you need the A team. Steve Jobs said it best, right? He's like, someone asked him, like, how much time should, a founder spend on hiring? And he's like, look, the third person you hire is 33% of your company. You don't think you should spend a lot of time on that? Like, he's like, of course you should, right? Or even go to the really big companies like GE and, Jack Welch's biography, he basically said, look, my most important job is hiring people. My second most important job is training people. When I started in my career, this is Jack Welch, of course, I got it right half the time. After decades, I get it right 80% of the time, right? So it's still not perfect, right? Even after decades of doing this. So yeah, super, super important. And I would throw in there too, like, you got to vet people, right? Like, meet them in person, talk to people they worked with, talk to their frickin' neighbors, whatever you need to do, right? You need to vet people aggressively because a startup cannot afford to make a lot of mistakes hiring people. You just can't, right?
They really can't. And I would say the same thing about investors. I wasted a lot of time trying to convince investors who weren't personality-wise the right fit or kind of values-wise the right fit for my company.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a complete waste of time. If with investors, it's the same thing. If it doesn't feel right to you, if it's not the right fit for your company, first of all, it's probably not going to happen anyways. But also, it's probably not going to help you if it does happen. Yeah. So it's the right to be picky, you have that as a founder.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's for early stage, under $1 million revenue companies, what's the best way to find investors, do you think?
Well, really, it's eventually I met everybody.
Right.
At first it felt so impossible. Eventually I met everybody. You gotta go. You gotta go in there, meet with who you can. Go to a pitch event, go to a meetup, start small. Nothing is, it's important to have the humility that not to look at any opportunity as below you. Go out there, practice, talk to people. And as you make authentic connection, and I can't emphasize that enough, authentic connections, real connections with people, good business is built on real connections. They'll introduce you to people. And suddenly you're in the room in A16Z or Lightspeed or anywhere, and you have your chance to pitch to the largest VCs. But by that point, you want to be well practiced.
Yeah, you want to have your pitch down by them. Absolutely. And in terms of advice to, let's say, the CEO of a large, we'll call it manufacturing company, what advice do you have for them around AI? I mean, you're seeing AI every day here. What should they do?
I think the main advice I would like to give those people is to help shape the kind of world that they would want their children to live in, that they wouldn't want to shield their children from.
Yeah.
Right. And to sort of take the responsibility, but also the enormous privilege to help shape this future that we're all creating right now, and realize that there is not just one way to do it. For example, AI doesn't have to be an all-knowing oracle. It can be a humble partner. So it's I think the leaders of today, especially the ones who are leading big companies, have an enormous responsibility in this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, turning to more kind of AI, philosophy and concerns, like what worries you most about AI in the next decade?
Unemployment, I think, and I think we're finally waking up to the fact that this is not paranoia. I think that it's a really, really urgent issue, because even if things land okay, even if humanity lands on its feet, the people who have to live through this transformation might have to pay a price, at least, a good chunk of us. And that's where we need some sense of collective responsibility. This whole, a whole bunch of selfish agents, I'm talking about human agents here, this idea of that everybody maximizing profit will somehow magically work out for society as a whole, doesn't work in a world where the following axiom starts to fail, right? We used to say that, do whatever company you need to do to maximize profit because you're creating jobs in the process. Well, what happens if the goal of your company is to replace jobs with AI?
Right.
Suddenly the whole model fails. And so this is where we probably do need governments to step in and start changing some of the axioms of our economic system.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, we will see what happens. And it's obviously a global phenomenon. And we also need to think about, the ethics of AI, right? Where the US is going to have huge access to AI. Like not every country in the world will, right? Some will just have much less access because they won't be able to afford it. What's the real price of AI right now? It is not your free version of ChatGPT on the internet, right? Like that's not going to be there forever. I remember I was working at Morgan Stanley during the dot-com bubble, and I remember these delivery startups that would deliver anything to you in New York City. You could literally order a pack of gum for 50 cents and deliver it to the person in the office next to you for free, right? It was like completely unsustainable. Like these companies were paying $20 to someone to deliver a 50-cent pack of gum. I'm like, that's what's going on with AI right now. Like free, on the internet, AI is not really free, or certainly won't be free for long. Awesome. So let's pivot to our last section. It's a lightning round. It's called underrated or overrated. So I'll mention different things and you tell me if you think they're underrated or overrated, or maybe fairly rated. That's okay. And the first one is the Silicon Valley lifestyle. Startups, hustle, tech culture, underrated or overrated?
About right.
About right. Seth Neal as an author, and give the audience a little information about Seth.
Definitely underrated. I love his theories. Kind of helps us understand how We hallucinate all the time, and it's time that we understood that.
Great. That's great. Sushi in the Bay Area, underrated or overrated?
Oh my goodness, so underrated. I was just in NVIDIA and had their sushi. I can't wait to go back for the sushi in part.
Wow, that is awesome. The future of, quote, digital workers, unquote, underrated or overrated?
Future of what do you mean by that?
So are they gonna be out there? Are they gonna be doing a lot or not doing a lot? Like, are they gonna work basically?
Are people going to work?
No, digital workers. In other words, like an AI employee type thing.
Oh God. Well, underrated in a sense that we're probably going to have more of that than we realize.
Yeah. And okay, moving on. Hiking as a hobby, underrated or overrated?
Underrated.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, my son's trying to become an Adirondack 46er. So you climb all 46 high peaks in Adirondacks, and I'm getting dragged along. So that was fun. French cuisine in the Bay Area, underrated or overrated?
Underrated. We have the best French food. I don't know why.
Wow, that's wild. Well, it's kind of like it's definitely climbing down in New York. It was huge decades ago, and now you got a couple of iconic restaurants around, and everything else is more like bistro. Playing the piano for fun, underrated or overrated?
Underrated, especially improvisation is underrated. We should teach our kids to improvise. Why are we just teaching them to repeat other people's music?
Yeah, well, you got to learn somehow, but improvisation is cool. I don't know, I feel like it's easier on the guitar, but whatever.
It's more on the guitar. It's much more common.
Yeah. Hawaii, the big island for vacation, underrated or overrated?
Underrated. Nothing. I know I tried a whole bunch of islands, and the first time I was there, I was in the big island, and that was so magical. You really feel the spirit of Hawaii there.
Yeah, it's super cool. Bodybuilding as a hobby, underrated or overrated?
I'm underrating everything.
Okay, that's all right. We're just giving the audience some information. And then last but not least, the movie Before Midnight, underrated or overrated?
How is it not more famous? It's so great.
Yeah.
It's a trilogy.
Yeah, and my son knew it. I vaguely remember it. I'm gonna have to go watch that one. Anyway, this has been tons of fun. Did you have fun on the show, Maya?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. So this has been Maya Ackerman, co-founder at WaveAI, professor at Santa Clara University, and author of Creative Machines. Tell us, where can people find your book, Maya?
Go on Amazon. Well, and pretty much anywhere else, but Amazon is a solid option.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Alec. It's been a pleasure.
You are listening to the AI Risk Reward podcast with your host, Alec Crawford. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts, for example, Apple Podcasts. Production and sound engineering by Troutman Street Audio. You can find them on LinkedIn. Please like, subscribe, and comment.